crocheter, and this is my podcast, Kate Makes Things. Thanks so much for joining me as I talk about the things that I've been making, and also share today my guidelines for garments based on 4 years of failed attempts. So welcome. First things first, finished objects, and I do actually have a finished object this week. I finished my Rosewater Shawl that I started last summer, and for the summer it was my travel project. So it went on lots of trips with me, and it was a great travel project, but I didn't get it finished on any of those trips. So now I can finally say that it is done and it is ready to go on trips with me this summer. So let's take a look. So the Rosewater pattern is by Janino Kallio. And I made it out of the Sweet Georgia Yarns Flaxen Silk Fine in the colorway Silver. And here she is all finished and blocked off of the needles. And I have to admit, she is super gorgeous. Seeing her on the screen, I'm loving the way that this looks. It is a really lazy lace pattern, which I enjoyed. It doesn't seem to matter exactly stitch count as long as you have an even number of rows or even number of stitches. You can pretty much do the lace pattern. And then I think I repeated it a total of 3 times to get this. Originally, my goal had been to use all of the yarn in the skein that I had so that I didn't have any extra. But I'm going to be honest, after I finished the 3rd repeat of lace, I decided that I was done. And I didn't want to work on it anymore or add any more lace repeats, so I bound off. I did almost finish all of the yarn. This is all that I have left. So not a ton left, but just a little bit. Anyways, I feel a little obnoxious about that, but I love the way that it turned out. My only issue with it, and this is not a pattern thing, this is a me thing, is that my garter band here is not as big as the garter band on the models. So on the models, the garter band is like half of the shawl and then the lace is the other half. So I think if I were gonna do it again, I would probably go up a needle size so that my gauge maybe matched better or was a little bit looser on the garter section. But I also think that I would just keep working the garter until it was halfway of what I wanted the length of the whole thing to be. So I would work a longer garter and then the lace so that the length was split half and half. This is kind of like 1/3, 2/3 is how it ended up. And like I said, it's a really lazy lace pattern. Say bye to the kitten. It's a really lazy lace pattern, so I think it would be really easy to do that and just increase the amount of garter rows that you did. Not hard at all. But I really loved this pattern. I highly recommend it. It's great airplane knitting if you need airplane knitting. It's a really nice introduction to lace. And look at how pretty that is. And you can't tell that I was so lazy with it and was just adding yarn overs when I needed them or knitting 2 together when I needed them. It turned out super nice. Very pleased with my Rosewater shawl. Only thing that I finished because I spent so much of February finishing projects. So now it's all up to, it's time to cast on new things, right? So I do have 2 works in progress right now. And the first is my socks made with LaRue vegan sock yarn, which is a mix of tencel, tencel is bamboo, tencel, cotton, and elastic. And you can kind of see the elastic in, as like a tweedy effect in the yarn itself. But this is the farthest that I have ever made it on a sock. I'm using Summer Lee's I'm So Basic sock pattern. And then I bought like the LaRue cotton sock set so that I have a contrasting color for the cuff, the heel, and the toe. I did have to go down. I actually cast on fewer stitches than the pattern calls for to make it fit my foot. Part of that is that I'm not working on the tiniest needles in the world like a lot of sock knitters are. I'm working on size 2 because that's as small as my little hands can handle. I don't think I like working on anything smaller than a size 2. And the other thing is, even though I'm 6 foot tall, I have relatively small feet. So I'm actually knitting it up at 51 stitches instead of like 57, which I think was what was in the pattern. But I also took a look at the Ravelry pages, the finished projects for the pattern, and I saw a couple of people mention that they went down. So I don't think it will be that big of a problem. We'll see when I get to the heel and the toe and the parts of the sock that are actually difficult that I have never done before. It might be my worst decision in the world, but we shall see how that works out on my first sock ever. So yay, first sock ever to actually get past the cuff. Socks. And then my second project is with the Evil Queen yarn that I showed you last time, that I was gauge swatching for it because it was such a light yarn. I wasn't sure what the gauge was going to work up to be. It's also hand dyed, and they didn't have, and she doesn't have on the ball bands any kind of gauge information about like what she works it up to. So I wanted to play around with the gauge a little bit before I chose a pattern. And I decided that I liked the pattern at the the size 2 needles. Or I liked the gauge at the size 2 needles, and that was what I decided to work on. I actually had some trouble finding a pattern to use for this yarn because I wanted something that was like a lacy yoke. I knew that I wanted like a top-down circular yoke that had a bunch of lace at the yoke, and there were not as many patterns at the gauge that I worked this up to fit that, which seemed really odd to me, but I guess it's a light fingering, not like a regular fingering weight yarn. So, but I did find one. It is the Lotus Tea by Sarah Blue Designs. She writes her patterns in both French and English, which has been interesting. And I'm not very far into it. So let's see if I can get you a nice, let's see, here we go, top down. And I'm still on the teeny tiny little 16-inch size 2 needles, and my cats are just all over me today because no one has been home with them yet today. You good, buddy? You want to say hi? Or just lay down? Okay. So one thing that was interesting on this pattern is that the short rows are actually worked in the ribbing. So let me see, I may have to put a picture up of what that looks like, but you can see at the front, well maybe, that the ribbing, the front neck, the ribbing is quite short, and then at the back neck it's much longer. There we go. Right, because you're working the short rows in the ribbing, which was an interesting technique. I'd never done it before, and I saw where a couple people had switched in their Ravelry projects and worked the short rows in stocking net, but I was like, you know what, I want to try it and see how I like it. I personally did not love working it simply because I lost track of what was my right side and my wrong side because it's ribbed. It's 1 by 1 rib, so it's all the same. And so I got towards the end of my short rows and I was like, did I lose track of where I am? Like, did I do enough turns? I am so confused. And I think I did enough. It seemed to match up on either side, but I think if I did this pattern again, I would switch it. Or if I did this pattern again, or if I came across another pattern that had the short rows in the rib, I would probably opt for doing them in stocking net, just for my own peace of mind. This pattern is going to be quite an adventure for me. It is the smallest full project that I have done on needles this size. I don't know if, the 4 inches of socks counts quite yet. So smallest project I've done on needles this size. It is, and I don't have needles this size in my interchangeable set, so it will be the first ever garment I have made without my interchangeables. So that will be interesting as well because I'm very used to, here's my other cat. I'm very used to just like switching out the cord when I need to and putting stoppers on the cord to try it on. So it's going to take a little bit more work to actually finish it. Yeah, hi bud. All right, so smallest needles, not using interchangeables, that's a change for me. The other big change with this pattern is that all the lace work is written in chart form. And I have never done lace in a chart form before. I've done color work on a hat, mosaic color work where you're just doing slip stitches in a chart form, but that was much easier because it's literally colors. This I'm having to pay attention to a lot. Add to that the fact that it is a relatively dark yarn on relatively dark needles, and I am no longer a super young person. So this is not at all mindless like the Rosewater lace was. And I'm at the point where it just kind of looks like crap right now because there's not enough lace to tell what the pattern is going to be, but there is enough lace to just have holes everywhere. So I really want to get far enough that I can tell, oh yes, I am actually paying attention. The pattern is actually working up like it's supposed to. Isn't that nice? So yeah, lots of adventures. I am going to put, when I finish filming, I'm going to put on a progress keeper so that I can show you next time how far I'm getting each time, given that it is tiny yarn and tiny needles and tiny stitches. And we'll see how far I can get on it. I am really loving the way that this yarn is working up, though. It is so gorgeous. So, the Lotus Tea, and it's a very, very early stages, basically an infant here. So I don't have any new acquisitions, given that I'm trying to use up most of my stash yarn before I buy anything new for a little while at least. And so this was going to be a very, very short podcast. But then today, Facebook reminded me that 4 years ago, I was working on my very first sweater. So I had signed up for my first sweater class at one of our local yarn stores here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we had our first class on the Saturday before the world shut down, and then we never had another class. So I went in and I got a couple of like beginner tips, and then the world ended, everything shut down and we never had another class. And so I never got to finish the class or learn anything else, but I was determined to finish the sweater. And I worked so hard on that sweater. It was basically all I did for those first couple weeks that the world was shut down. And I finished it and I seamed it and I put it on and I was like, I don't like this. And I had worked so hard on it. And I didn't like it, and I was like, I don't know that I'm ever going to wear this. Why did I spend all of this time on this? And then over the next few years, I had many more fails. And so I wanted to share with you my guidelines for garment knitting so that you can make something, or garment creating rather, whether you're crocheting or knitting, so that you make something that you love and that you want to wear. And you don't have a first sweater experience quite like I did, where you finish the thing that you had just spent, 50 hours on and you hate it. So here are my guidelines for garments. All right, so guideline number 1 is one of the most important, and it is pick a style sweater and a color of yarn that you will actually wear, that fits into your existing style and that you can see yourself wearing. I think a lot of times people take gorgeous, gorgeous finished object photos and gorgeous pattern photos, and they put those all on Ravelry, and we see those on Ravelry and Instagram and Pinterest and all of these places, and we're like, oh my God, wouldn't I look great in that? But then you have to realize, like, oh no, they're on a mountain in the Alps or on a beach somewhere. And so is it the picture that I love, or is it the garment that I love? And I've had a few times like that where I see the pictures and I'm like, oh my God, love that. And so I make this thing and then I'm like, what? I wear it once because I'm like, I don't wear things like this. So that's what happened with this first sweater that I tried to make, was that it was the sweater pattern that the class called for, that they were doing for the class. And it was not at all a sweater pattern or a style that I wear in my everyday life. It looks great. The pattern photos look great. All the people who made it and wear it in their Ravelry project photos look great. It was not at all my style. And I should have realized that going in, that maybe this wasn't the best class for me, because this was not a thing that I was going to wear. I also feel like we sometimes get distracted by like make-alongs or things like that. And we're like, yeah, I want to be a part of this group and I want to do this thing with other people. And so we make something that doesn't match our personal style, and then we're not really happy with the end result of it. So picking a style that you love is really important, and a style that you will actually wear and that you can see yourself wearing. So think about like, okay, once I finish this, how am I going to style it? How am I going to wear it? Because that will also help with the next role. So style, but color is also really, really important. I know there are people out there who look good in absolutely every color. I am not one of those people. I will never wear orange, or yellow. I'm wearing orange right now. I will never wear yellow unless you make me. And I don't like pink. Even though I look fine in pink, I don't like it. So I don't tend to wear pink either. So I know not to buy yarns that color. But again, when I did this first sweater class, I had signed up with the yarn store, and so I figured I should get my yarn at that yarn store and that they would know what was best for me. But when I went in and said, oh, well, I'd rather not have wool, they were a little rude about it, to be honest. And they were like, okay, well, this is all that we have, and we only have it in one color. That's enough for you to make this garment. So I ended up with this green. And normally I love green, but this was just not the right green. So the green color and then the style just did not fit me at all. So from the beginning, I was starting off on the wrong foot. This is also my plea to local yarn stores. Please start carrying more non-wool yarns that are good for garments in sweater quantities. We want to buy it from you, but if you don't have it, we have to go elsewhere. So please start carrying some non-wool yarns in sweater quantities, please. Because I have always had trouble finding sweater quantities of yarn for things that I can wear comfortably at local yarn stores. So, okay, there's my high horse. All right, so number one, pick a style and a color that you will actually wear that fits your sense of style. Number two, measure yourself and clothes that you love. So you have to know your own measurements in order to pick a size, right? So you need to know what is the widest part of your bust, or your shoulders, or all of these other things depending on the sweater pattern. And usually the pattern will tell you exactly what to measure. And I will link below a blog post from Amy Herzog that can help you measure. She also has some videos as well. So you need to know your own measurements in order to even pick a size that you want, that you are going to work up. But I wish someone had told me from the beginning to measure pieces of clothing that I like, that are similar to this thing to the sweater that I want to make, right? So if I'm going to make a raglan, I will measure a store-bought sweater that I have that is also that kind of shape that fits like I want this sweater to fit, and I will measure it to determine the ease. So ease is the difference between the sweater's circumference and your bust circumference, and that determines how loose or tight a sweater is going to fit. When I started making garments, I thought, oh, I want all of my garments to be like 1 inch of ease. And so I made all these things that were 1 inch of ease, and then I would be so uncomfortable wearing them. Well, once I started measuring my own clothes to see what I liked, like my store-bought clothes, I realized, no, I like 4 or 5 inches of ease on my sweaters. And so now I know, okay, I need at least 4 inches of ease when I am making something, because that is what is going to be comfortable on me. That is what I already like to wear. So you need to know your own measurements, but you also need to know what type of ease you like in the clothes that you already wear all the time. So your favorite t-shirts, your favorite sweaters, whatever else it may be. Measure your clothes. That's going to help you figure out where you want something to fit. And if you have a top or something that fits the way that you want that t-shirt or that sweater that you're knitting to fit, even better, right? All right. And then rule number 3 is do not be afraid to make modifications so that something will fit you well. Right? I've mentioned before, I am 6 feet tall. I have like nice long gorilla arms. I have to add length on bodies and sleeves all the time. Even if something is considered cropped, I still have to add 2 inches because there is so much more torso to me than people who are not 6 feet tall. And length tends to be an easy modification to make, but you can make other modifications as well. Right, for my Syngonium sweater, I added the short rows to the raglan that weren't in the pattern. For my hazel tank, I adjusted the armholing so that I could wear a regular bra and be comfortable with it. You can find a video tutorial for just about everything somewhere online, especially in knitting and crochet. So feel free to make the modifications so that it will fit you well, right? And if it doesn't work, it's just yarn, right? You can go back and you can try it again or do something different. But I think a lot of times people don't make modifications because they're like, oh no, that's a thing that advanced people do. But it's not. It's something that adventurous knitters do, not necessarily advanced knitters and crocheters, sorry. I'm using knitting as a catch-all here, but it all counts for crochet as well. Make the modifications that you need to feel comfortable on something that you are spending so much time to make. It is going to make you happier with your finished project, and it is going to make you a better crafter because you're going to have some more skills under your belt that you can, some more skills in your toolbox that you can use then when you make new things. Don't be afraid of the modifications, right? It is not a thing for advanced crafters. It is for everybody. All right, so those are my 3 rules, my 3 guidelines for garments. Pick styles of sweaters, styles of garments, and yarn colors that you are actually going to wear and that fit your personal style. Measure yourself and your store-bought clothes to figure out what size you want out of each of those. And then make the modifications that you need because it's your body and your garment and your craft. And you can do whatever you need to do to make yourself happy with it. So that's all I have for you today. Pretty light podcast, but I hope you found some of it useful, and I hope you'll come back and join me again. In the meantime, happy crafting!